Come back. We're going to be talking to Paul Duffy, whose brother Colin is in prison once again being framed, this time for supposedly killing 2 British soldiers in Ireland. And we're going to be talking to Paul about what's happening with his brother and how he can't even speak to his lawyers in private. But first we'll go to a little music.
Apartheid, internment, conscription, partition and silence. It's a law that they make to keep you and me where they think we belong. They hide behind steel and bulletproof glass, machine guns and spies. And they tell us who suffer the tear gas and the torture that we're in the wrong. No time for love if they come in the morning. No time to show tears if our fears in the morning. No time for goodbye, no time to ask why. And the sound of the sirens, the cry of the morning. They suffered the torture, they rotted in cells when crazy wrote letters and died. The limits of pain they endured, but the loneliness got them instead. And the courts gave them justice, as justice is given by well-mannered thugs. Sometimes they fought for the will to survive, but more times they just wished they were dead. No time for love if they come in the morning. No time to show tears if our fears in the morning. No time for goodbye, no time to ask why. And the sound of the sirens, the cry of the morning. They took away young Francis Hughes and his cousin Tom McAwee as well. They came for Patsy O'Hara and Bobby Sands and some of his friends. In Boston, Chicago, Saigon, Santiago, Warsaw and Belfast. And places that never make headlines, the list never ends. No time for love if they come in the morning. No time to show tears if our fears in the morning. No time for goodbye, no time to ask why. And the sound of the sirens, the cry of the morning. The boys in blue.
Yeah, 99.5. Morning. Very appropriate, because we're talking with Paul Duffy, whose brother Colin is sitting in a British prison cell in the north of Ireland, charged with killing British soldiers. Paul, thanks very much for being with us.
That's no problem. I appreciate you letting me come on the show there.
It's our honour, please. Now, just tell us again, they've charged your brother with killing British soldiers in the north of Ireland. What's the latest on his case?
Well, as you were, Colin was charged 7 weeks ago there. Well, he was actually arrested 7 weeks ago. He spent a period of 13 days in an interrogation centre in the 6 counties here. It's now 7 weeks on. Colin has been charged since. It's been remanded to McGabbery Prison. He's in a situation now where he hasn't even had to got to speak to his legal team because of a whole issue surrounding the confidentiality of him being able to speak to his legal team free from any interference of the state. Colin's legal team have asked the question as to whether the room that they would be meeting in with Colin is actually being monitored or bugged. In any other situation throughout the world, people have that right, the right to speak to their legal representatives without any interference. The authorities within the prison have refused to either confirm or deny whether it has been bugged. So Colin has actually took a case, asked for a judicial review in relation to that issue.
Well, Paul,
and that will happen on Wednesday.
Paul, if I lived in the north of Ireland and the British prison authorities refused to tell me whether my conversation was being monitored, I would kind of think it was.
Yeah, he would have to assume that was the case, regardless of what the state they say, But he wants to. It's more to do with the legal team, rather than Colin himself. The legal team, there has been issues in the past where, they've actually been using, conversations and tape conversations in order to actually target and put down, lawyers, in the 6 counties. So they are very careful and they're very mindful, of that situation,
And Paul, this is not the first time. I mean, Colin was framed twice before on very serious charges. And speaking of lawyers, only really walked free because of his lawyer, Rosemary Nelson, who was then killed by loyalist pro-British paramilitaries.
Yeah, that's correct. It's the family's view here that, this is an ongoing sort of, Colin is a victim of state persecution that's historical in nature. We can go right back to 1990 when Colin is basically one of the only surviving witnesses to a proven state murder which occurred here. A friend of the family, Sam Marshall, was reporting under bail conditions along with Colin and another man to the RUC barracks in Lurgan. At that particular time, they were aware that there was cars actually following them and monitoring them on their way. It materialised straight after that. What happened is 2 loyalist gunmen jumped out of a car and shot dead Sam Marshall. Colin and the other fellow actually escaped the intent. What came out and transpired after that, and what actually happened in the United States of America, was that on an extradition hearing, one of the inspectors, who was an RUC inspector, who was involved in allegations of collusion at that time, which was widely felt by the community that the RUC were involved, along with loyalist paramilitaries, in that shooting, and that he stated in an extradition hearing that the cars that were actually had Colin and his friend Sam under surveillance was actually a security force motor. So what you're talking about here is in 1990 you had that issue. You take it up to 93. 3 years later, Colin was actually charged and actually convicted in a Diplock court for. That's
just for our listeners who don't know, that's a non-jury British court in the north of Ireland.
Yeah, that's correct. Where you have one judge basically who sits there. You haven't got a jury. You have a judge who sits on that court, and
a British judge, we should add.
A British judge, yeah, exactly, and who will make the decisions as to whether somebody spends the rest of their life in jail or is released. So you're talking up 3 years after that initial thing. You're talking up to 1993. Colin was actually charged, spent a period of 2 years on remand before he actually came to trial. The judge convicted him on the evidence of a UVF gunman, a guy who the judge actually said was a reliable witness at the time. It transpired a year later after Colin was convicted that this witness A or witness D, I'm not quite sure what he was. He kept his name from Colin and all his legal team at the time. And what happened is the judge said that the witness was reliable. He convicted Colin. Colin was got a life sentence for that. It transpired that this witness was later caught gun running for the UVF. He admitted publicly that he was asked by the RUC to provide a clean witness in order to convict Colin. Once that was released into the public domain, Colin lodged an appeal against his conviction, and there was a lot of observers. There was a lot of American lawyers actually came over to the case. Rosemary Nelson would have been involved heavily in the case, and a campaign was initiated by the family, and as a result, Colin was released. So that's 3 years after the murder attempt, that they had on him. And, another, Colin was released in 1986. In 1987, the following year, they tried the same again. They tried to frame him up again. They arrested him for the killing of 2 RUC officers in Lurgan. He spent 3 months on remand It never went to the court. Actually, the charges were dropped, and the family believes that was a result of pressure being applied. And I would like to take this opportunity to say that Rosemary, did her utmost, in relation to Colin's case at that particular time, and along with a lot of friends and a lot of people who had got in touch with the family. And as a result, 3 months down the road after Colin had been held in prison once again, the charges were dropped and Colin was released. And so, you've a long history of attempts of killing them, of attempts to frame them up, of convicting them and releasing them. And the family believe that this, when is this going to end? This is the latest attempt of them trying to basically frame Colin up here,
And Paul, before I let you go, there's really been uproar about this case. Throughout your area, and I think throughout the 6 counties of Northern Ireland. And some people are really talking about, because your brother has been so wronged and because there's a lot of repression going on, about running him as a candidate for the European Parliament. What's the chances of that?
Well, it's after Colin's arrest and detention here, and the fact that he's lying down in jail, the family's view is, that we will do our utmost. We will do whatever is necessary to actually secure Colin's release. Now, we formed a campaign committee here, and which consists mainly of members of the family and a few close friends. Colin is well respected within our local community. He's well respected across the 6 counties. He's viewed as a Republican who has stood up for people in the past in terms of injustice and stuff like that. I would ask people, from making a